carry forward and talk some more about variables. So in the last video, we had just set a numeric variable and increased it by a certain percentage so we can do math with our variables. And previous to that, I'd showed you concatenation where we could stick some things together. Now, let's try some new things and try sticking together both numbers and strings in the same area and see what happens. So first off, let's declare a new numeric variable. I'll call it inum1 equals 10. And let's declare a new string. Let's string new name equal, and we'll call this Donald. And let's declare another number. Let inum2 equals 25. Okay, so we have a few new variables that we have just declared and set to something. And let's watch what happens when we try to concatenate these things. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to say let, and I'll say new var, so for new variable. And I'm going to say, I'm going to set this equal to the new name plus inum1 plus inum2. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I stick all of these things together? Is it just going to put them together as text? Is it going to add some numbers? What's it going to do? Let's go ahead and find out. So I'll say alert new var, and it says Donald 1025. Interesting. So it didn't add them, it just stuck them directly together. Isn't that an interesting result? Let's try and do that differently. So I'm going to reset the value of this variable. I'm going to say new var equals inum1 plus inum2 plus s new name. So I'm going to do it that way. And now I'm going to click up a couple times. Now we already see a preview of what's going to happen there, but if I put it in an alert box now, it says 35 Donald. Ooh, isn't that interesting? So just recapping, when we put the numbers at the end after preceding them by a string, it just glued them together without doing any math. When we did the numbers first and then the string, it added them and then it put the string on it. So just be aware that the order in which you create your variables or stick them together can affect how JavaScript treats them. And in this case, the thing that jumps out is that when we start off something by beginning it with a string, then everything after it gets treated like a string. If we start things out with numbers, then it treats them like numbers initially and adds them together. And then once it hits a string, it stops treating these variables as numbers and then just adds that on and glues it to the initial thing. Okay, for a little bit of practice right now, I'd like you to take a quick break and create two variables. One to hold the number of donuts that we sell on Monday, and two, a variable that will hold the number of variables that we sell on Tuesday. So just do that as a quick little trick, little test for yourself. Okay, so if you've tried that, let's just say let, and then Monday sales equals 1,000. And we could do this on two different lines, declaring the variable and then assigning it, or put it all in one. Either of those is fine. And then we'll say let Tuesday sales equals, and then again, some other arbitrary number. Okay. Next thing I'd like to talk about is naming conventions. For the most part, you can start off your variables with the letters A through Z, and then some other special characters such as a $sign. If you try to begin variables with other things, let's just say a number, and then like maybe I'll go 3 sales equals 20 or something like that. So if I try and do that, it's going to say, hey, That's invalid syntax. So generally speaking, again, just characters of the alphabet, $, underscore is another important one you're allowed to use. So generally speaking, those ones are safe, but many other characters are not going to work for you. Another thing to think about is case sensitivity. Variables are case sensitive, meaning that if I were to create another variable and I call it let I Tuesday sales equals 2000, this is a completely different variable than that one. All you need to do is be different by a single character in terms of uppercase or lowercase, and it is a different variable. In some other languages, they are not case sensitive, and so anything of a certain set of characters evaluates to the same thing, whether it's uppercase or lowercase. But in JavaScript, it is going to matter. Okay, let us talk about a few different key types of variables. And I'm going to introduce something right here called a comment. When I do a comment, that means that it's going to look green on the screen, and it's not going to be interpreted and break anything. So I'm going to put 2 forward slashes here, and I'm going to say one type of variable is a string, and so that's just plain text like we've done before with names. Another type of variable that we can set is a number, and we showed you integers as well as floats, which are decimals. Actually, yeah, we did a float with the raise amount. Another type of variable is going to be a Boolean, and that's a true or a false value. So let me show you what that one looks like. Let's see, Boolean true or false. And I can set this equal to true. So this looks a little strange. It's more like a number where we don't put it in quotes. So you can set a Boolean value to true or false, and then if you were to print it back out to the screen, Boolean true or false, with the alert, it comes back as true. So you can't do capital T, you can't do all uppercase true. It's just all lowercase true or all lowercase false. And this becomes very important when we are evaluating conditional statements and doing if statements and things like that later on. We want to find out if some variable holds true, then we'll do something, and otherwise we'll do something else. Okay, so that's a Boolean. Another thing is undefined. So if I just try to alert something, blah, 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 something I haven't even declared, it says this is an uncaught reference, it's not defined. So JavaScript doesn't like it when you try to reference some variable that does not exist yet. And then similar to undefined, but which is not going to break your code, is if you do something like let I empty var. So I'm just calling this an empty variable equals null. And null is a way to say I want this thing to be empty. This is a special type of variable which means to the reader and the programmer that it is empty. And if I do alert I empty var, notice that it says it's null. So it's empty. Null is a special word for empty, but it's not like it doesn't exist. It does exist. And sometimes you want to reset something that you've had before and set it equal to null. Maybe you're clearing it out. So let me go ahead and lazily copy this, and I'll say equal null. So I can reset a variable or reassign a variable that's been used before. And then if I up-click a couple times, that thing that was true or false is now holding null. Okay, so that's it with about 5 key types of variables that I wanted to talk about. Now I'd like to talk about working with strings and variables. So let's go with the first name again. I'll go S first name, and let's say, so before I had set it equal to my first name here. But what if we wanted to do something where we had a single quote in here? Well, it's not really a problem if we do this. Now this is going to be a strange name, but I just want to demonstrate using single quotes. So I'll say, maybe I'll do a whole sentence. Dagon's first name. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do an alert there, S first name. And it pops up and everything's fine. It's got that single quote in there. What if I tried to use single quotes on here? Well, technically I can. I can surround any string with single quotes instead of double quotes. However, in this case, with this other single quote in there, JavaScript thinks that I ended things right there, and then it has no idea what to do with basically the rest of that syntax. And if I click return, I get some error message. There's two different ways I could fix this. One is we do something called an escape character. So if we don't want this to act like another single quote, we can do a backslash, and that makes JavaScript ignore it, at least in terms of treating it like the end of the text. And so if I go up a couple times and do an alert, everything came out okay, and we don't see anything additional there. So the backslash becomes an invisible character. Another thing that we could do is put double quotes in the middle of a string. So I'll do S first name equals, and then this will look a little weird, but Dagon, and then a double quote, Dagon's first name. So that works as well, and if I alert it, then I'll get that printed out to the screen. And if I wanted to surround the whole thing with double quotes, then I would have to put a backslash there as well. Okay, let's now move on to numbers here and show some differences as it relates to integers and floats. So I'll say let I price, and so all I've done is declared it. I haven't set it equal to anything, and I'll say I price equals 1. And this time, instead of alert, I'll do console.log. So if I do console.log and print that back out to the screen, what's it going to print out? 1. Okay, fair enough. Now what happens if we try and do a decimal here? So I'm going to click up a couple times and set this equal to 1.0. I hit return, and I go up a couple times and say, okay, now print it out to the screen. And it's still a 1. All right, so I'm going to up click a couple times. What if I do 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0? Lots of zeros. Okay, and then I try to print that out to the screen, and it comes out as a 1. So we can see that it doesn't really matter how many zeros we put after it. It's considered to be an insignificant digit, and it gets ignored, at least in terms of the console.log statement. Let's go ahead and add in something to the end. I'll say dot, we'll do a 3 way out there. And now if we do console.log, because there was something significant, a significant digit in this list, it does retain all of the zeros and prints it back out. Okay, I would like to give you a little programming challenge at this point, and I'll just go ahead and write it out to the screen, and I'll say write some variables that convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. And I don't want to misspell Fahrenheit, so I'll just, well, I'll take a guess. I hope that's right. I could Google it and see what the right spelling is. But anyway, write some variables and some calculations that convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, and then we'll see what happens. So just go out there and look on the web for the formula that converts Celsius to Fahrenheit, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little search. Okay, formula Celsius to Fahrenheit. And it says we take the Celsius, we multiply it by 9/5, and then we add 32. All right, so let's go ahead and start with some arbitrary number here. I'll say let I Celsius equal 35, and we'll have let I FAHR. We don't have anything yet. We'll say I FAHR equals I Celsius times 9/5. And I would actually like to do this in a couple of steps, so I'll surround that by parentheses, and then I will add 32. And it looks like 35 degrees Celsius would be 95 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so thank you for playing with me today as we learned about variables in JavaScript.